Hello and welcome back to Property Matters on Dublin South FM and on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon. You can contact us on social media at iPropertyRadio or email hello@iPropertyRadio.com. Joining us today is a returning guest, Tom Gilligan, Director of Services at Mayo County Council. Tom, you're very welcome. It's been a while since we've spoken to you directly.
It has, Carol. It's been too long, but listen, delighted and thanks so much for the invitation. Delighted to be back.
You're welcome anytime. And the reason I say it's a long time since we've spoken to you directly is because, as I mentioned to you off air, I think you might, yourself and Rona Lyons are probably our two most quoted guests or reference guests on the show when I'm talking to anybody. And you have been so welcoming to innovators who have new ideas about how to possibly stimulate housing supply. So Mayo County Council has definitely been one of the front runners in this. So I know you've been very welcoming to startups across the prop tech and construction tech space. So thank you so much. We always appreciate that. So look, I mentioned that you are the Director of Services with Mayo County Council, and is it really in that capacity, or was it almost in a private capacity, that you were one of the early driving forces of vacanthomes.ie? So you might just take us back to the genesis of that, because while we've spoken about it before in the show and we've referenced it so many times, this initiative really got state support, it's turned into policy, and now it is a really important part of the strategy as to how we get new supply back into the marketplace.
Yeah, that's right, Carolyn. Once again, thanks for the opportunity to talk to you today. Yeah, vacanthomes.ie. Well, look, I suppose really as regards vacant homes and the whole issue in relation to vacancy and dereliction, I've always had a huge passion in this area, and I've worked in both the private and the public sectors, but particularly within my role at the moment in housing as a Director of Services in Mayo. Housing and the supply of housing has always been something that's been of huge interest to me. And I suppose really stemming back from the time of Rebuilding Ireland and when Rebuilding Ireland came out. And I was delighted at that time, I suppose, in relation to the dimension of using existing stock and revitalizing, I suppose, existing stock and bringing vacant homes back into use. Because I suppose at the time, the census 2016 indicated 183,000 vacant homes. And I mean, based here in Mayo, we have so much vacancy and dereliction, unfortunately, in our towns, in our villages. And it really is a blight in our society. And it has such a negative impact, not just on the housing aspect of it, but also on the community side as well. So I suppose the whole idea of vacanthomes.ie came about from my initial thinking in relation to how are we going to solve this problem. And I found with the whole issue of vacant homes, one of the major issues around it was that people were wondering why is a property vacant? And every vacant home has a story to tell. And the whole idea around vacanthomes.ie is that it's a crowdsourcing initiative. So local people obviously have the local knowledge. And what we're asking people to do is that if they come across a vacant home in their area, they might be out going for a walk or a run, etc. And if they see a vacant home in the area, to log it on to vacanthomes.ie. An alert is then sent to the vacant home officer in each local authority. And I suppose it's their role at that stage then to follow up in order to try and bring that vacant home back into use as quickly as possible. So it's relying so much, I think, and it does, from the point of view of asking the public and asking people in their communities to come on board and to help us, I suppose, in a sense, solve the housing crisis, because it's a problem that affects every single individual in our community. So I think it's a great opportunity and a great way for, instead of putting the power into certain people's hands, I think with vacanthomes.ie it gives the power, because it allows the power to go into everyone's hands. And in order for everyone else to provide a solution in order to bring those vacant homes back into use. So we're delighted with the success of the project and the initiative so far. And as I say, we just, at this stage, I suppose we want to see it grow and get more vacant homes back into use.
I think it's interesting, Tom, from the genesis of this in the first year or two, people were starting to get engaged, as in the community was starting to get engaged, because planning and housing is everybody's business. It's something that the community should be very involved in. But I think it's fair to say over the past 2 decades, I don't believe people were very engaged. I think it's only in the past 5 years, and particularly since COVID, that actually communities have become so engaged in what's happening in their local community. And unfortunately, that's manifesting maybe in a lot of objections or criticisms or seen as challenges. And part of me thinks that that's almost a correction that needed to happen, because people weren't engaged at all. And then we started to get them engaged, but only those who felt strongly in the negative were becoming engaged. Whereas I think the challenge going forward is to really put across the message that living within the community, housing is everybody's business. So we want people involved in the positive and the negative. And that's why I think the crowdsourcing element was so powerful. But right now, there's such a huge amount of public anger and frustration around people. So actually dealing with or trying to get access to vacant properties that people identify is one of the biggest inquiries that we get. And it's also one of the biggest sources of innovation that startups are working on. But one of the challenges they have is that the owners of these properties don't identify themselves as the owners of vacant properties. They're either not present, they have almost not forgotten that they have an interest in this, but usually so for example, some of the examples we've seen are, where there was a property that was left to a family member, and that family member is not living in Ireland, and other family members have an interest, so it never gets settled. Nobody feels like they own it fully. And so part of the challenge is a lot of these vacant properties, the title isn't straightforward to bring them back. So what has been your experience, or the experience of the vacant home officers around the country that you're dealing with?
Absolutely, Carol, and you're right. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. I think one of the biggest challenges, I suppose, we face in relation to bringing vacant properties back into use is that, and even the first instant there of just trying to, identify who the owner is. And you're right. I mean, there are people who are walking around today that don't realise that they probably do own or have a part ownership in a vacant property. And we come across stories every day whereby vacant properties are there, and even asking what we do, I suppose, in the sense of what the crowdsourcing aspect of it does for us is that it allows us, those neighbours, to and people in the community to maybe provide that little nugget of information that can help to unlock. That could be the key to unlock the potential around this vacant property. But you're right. I mean, there are people who have a vacant property and own a vacant property, but probably don't realise it. They might be left it in a will, and then there are properties that are tied up in probate. So if there are issues, and you will have a family and siblings that probably are a part ownership of a property, and for them to agree what to do with the property. I remember one particular property, and there was about 5 in the family, and I think 2 of them wanted to sell it. The other 2 wanted to do it up, and the final sibling didn't want anything done at all with it. It was nearly as a monument to the family member that had lived there before. So getting agreement as to what to do is absolutely critical. But I think in time that we are in such a housing crisis at the moment, and there is such a lack of properties available, I really do think that we have a moral responsibility and an ownership. We need to take ownership of this issue, and we need to bring these properties back into use. I don't think we have any choice around this at this stage, and we need to be doing everything we can. And I would urge anyone who has a vacant property and they either own it or a part ownership, do what you can to bring that property back into use. Please don't have it sitting there, falling into dereliction, becoming an area where that might attract antisocial behaviour that is having such a negative impact on your community. And you're not being a good neighbour if you have a vacant property and if it falls into dereliction and it's impacting on the community. Because apart from the housing aspect of it, I mean, when you think of the properties around that derelict property or vacant property, I mean, it's impacting economically as well. And it studies have shown it does have mental health issues around this as well, because no one wants to be coming out and looking at a derelict site or derelict property, because it's it's just reflects very bad on the community. And you're right, what you're saying before, particularly with like the tidy towns groups and people that have such pride in their communities, and people go out and pick litter every Saturday or Sunday or in the evening time. I mean, they want to keep an area clean. They want to keep it looking fresh, and they want to, to ensure that people are able to live in and have a good quality of life. And that's why I think we have such an onus on us to bring vacant properties back into use. But apart from the fact in relation to the ownership, I suppose there's so many reasons why properties are vacant. Identifying the owner, then the property could be in probate. You have instances as well where owners don't have the financial means in order to bring that property back into use, and that can be a problem as well. Also, as well, I'm coming across owners that aren't motivated to bring that property back into use. They're saying, well, look, they're sitting on the property and they might be wanting to speculate and say, well, look, it might increase in value, and they don't realize actually how valuable that property is. That's the key thing,
Do you think the state is doing enough in terms of even the introduction of fines and taxes on vacant properties? Do you think the state is doing enough? We talk about the carrot and the stick, and I think there are a number of carrots now in terms of new policies over the last 18 months. But do you think the sticks are strong enough?
Well, I do agree with what you're saying there. I think it needs that carrot and stick approach. And I suppose we've had, particularly now with the revenue coming on board as well, we've had the whole idea of the vacant home tax and the introduction of that, which is good. We have in relation to property and land site levies as well, and I think that they're very positive. And the other thing as well, I think what's happening is, and I very much welcome the whole aspects in relation to the Croi Conaithe and the Vacant Property Refurbishment Grant, whereby someone who wants to use the property as their principal private residence, they'll either get a grant of 30,000 if it's vacant, or that'll be topped up by an additional 20,000 to 50,000 if the property is vacant. So I think all that is good and all that is positive. But the reality is we probably need to do more. We need to see more. I mean, it's very interesting that the latest census, 2022, identified nationally over 166,000 vacant properties in this country, which is still a sizable amount.
And that excludes holiday homes.
Absolutely, Carol. Like here in Mayo as well. I mean, the census indicated that for 2022 that we have 9,166 vacant homes, and in addition to that, we have in excess of 5,000 holiday homes. So I mean, there is such a level of vacancy and such a high level of vacancy that we need to do whatever we can in order to bring properties back into use. So look, I welcome the initiatives that have happened. I think that there's certainly steps in the right direction, but it's up to people now as well. And I think we all have to take ownership of this. It's not fair, I think, or it's not down to just one minister or one government or one department. I think that the onus and the responsibility lies in all of us in order to do what we can to bring vacant properties back into use. Because, I mean, there's so many people at this stage, that need a home. We're seeing record levels of homelessness. We're seeing so many young people and, younger generation that are trapped at home, basically with mom and dad, that want the opportunity to go out and own a home of their own, and I think, it's terrible that people are not able to have that opportunity, and we need to do this because home ownership is just so key and so important. And I think it is a key pillar of it is a key pillar within the Housing for All program as well. So look, there are positive steps happening, but we still have a long way to go yet.
Tom, I often call you one of the most open to innovation. So one of the most innovative and open to innovation, director of services around the country. And that's really reflected in some of the work that Mayo County Council has done. But you're working on a really interesting project that we have profiled on the show previously, but you might just talk us through it, and maybe other local authorities listening in might be able to kind of benefit from some of the insights, your experience. So, we previously interviewed Croi Conaithe of Homebuyer's Hero, a really interesting proposition. But Mayo County Council have taken this a step further. So you might just talk us through that matchmaking pilot.
Yeah, and thanks, Caroline. Look, yeah, it's great at the moment. I suppose from our point of view, yes, there is a vacant homes matchmaking pilot that we've launched here in Mayo. And I suppose, first of all, I want to thank Colum and Homebuyers Hero, and also the Housing Finance Agency need to get a mention as well, because I suppose, that has provided the funding to us in order to commence this partnership and collaborating with Colum Casey and Homebuyers Hero. And I suppose the idea of that, I suppose, in the sense that this will enable Mayo County Council, in collaboration with Homebuyers Hero, to bring vacant homes and potential vacant homes back into use. So what we want to do, and how the pilot will work, is that Mayo County Council, we will assess vacant properties, compile a list of suitable homes, and what we're doing at the moment is that we're writing to those owners and encouraging them to participate in the pilot. And then what will happen then is that prospective home buyers, and there are so many of them out there, they will be able to view these properties on the Homebuyers Hero website. And that will allow them, I suppose, to declare an interest in the property. And this pilot is aimed at those people who want to make that property their principal private residence. And that's key. And when enough people then are interested in a particular property, and Homebuyers Hero will establish how many prospective buyers would be willing to buy or purchase that property, then we'll be able to set up, I suppose, in the sense that the property owner then will be able to get a good idea how much that property is valued, because that's one of the key problems at the moment, is that vacant homeowners don't know how much their property is worth. A lot of them believe and are being told that their property isn't worth anything, but they need to realize, I suppose, in the sense that there is a market there for these vacant homes, and that there are potential buyers that are coming and need, they want to engage. Just one thing in relation to that, and going back to the vacanthomes.ie, and in talking to the vacant home officers in the local authorities, I mean, one of the key things we do get constantly is that, people who are out walking and they come to us and they say, look, I've come across a vacant home and I want to, I'd love to live here. I would love that home to be my home. And they're inquiring as to how they can do that. So there's no doubt about it. I think the Vacant Homes Matchmaking pilot will do that. And I suppose, in a sense, one of the key aspects around this as well, what we want to do is that we want to look at potential solutions, because there are so many challenges, I think, to bringing a vacant home back into use. It's not just identifying the owner, get the owner to engage, and then getting the buyers ready. But then it's obviously getting mortgages around that as well. So I suppose it's working with banks and other mortgage lenders around that in order to bring those properties back into use. So I suppose what we're doing is that, a starting pool of about, initially, I suppose, in excess of 50. And what we want to do is get those potential home buyers on board, and there's a significant list at the moment, and then have the property owners as well. So really, in a sense, it's matchmaking. It's really, I suppose, bringing two people together, and it's sort of, in a sense, it's bringing them together. And look, there will be some instances where the property owner might be reluctant to sell the property owner. So what we're saying is that, look, in some cases, as a last resort, we might have to look at utilising our CPO powers as well in order to bring that property back into use. But what we really want to see is vacant homeowners coming on board, and potential home buyers as well, and matching the two together. And we see this as a great initiative in order to do that, in order to help increase the supply of housing going forward.
Yeah, look, I think it's a fantastic one. It's definitely one we're watching closely with interest, and I hope other local authorities around the country are doing the same. Do you envisage that these properties would come under then the Croi Conaithe scheme, that they would actually come in line for potentially refurbishment grants?
Absolutely, Carol. I mean, one of the key things about this, what we want to see is that we want to see these homes turn into someone's, own home as a principal private home residence. And that's what we're doing. We're encouraging, I suppose, in a sense, because the great thing about this is once the person then owns this home, then they will have access then to the Croi Conaithe grants and the Vacant Property Refurbishment Grant. And as I've already mentioned, I mean, you have 30,000 there for a vacant property, and then 50,000 for a property is derelict. Now, the reality is it will take more money, obviously, than that in some cases to bring the property back into use. But at least it gives someone a very good start and gives them a good motivation in order to do it. So that's what we really are, I suppose, looking for that, because it is. And I think one of the key things around this pilot and this working with Homebuyers Hero is that we do want to see home ownership, and we want to encourage more and more people to have the opportunity to own their own home. I working in the housing here in Mayo, I say this to people, the best days that I have here and the greatest days and the most joyous days are those days when you hand a key to someone to their own front door. And I mean, to see, I've seen people literally in tears when they do that, because they are just so excited. They're so overcome with emotion that it's just great to see. And we want to see that replicated many, many, many times. We want to see people having their own front door and having their own property.
Tom, I love that. And I think that that's exactly what we should be aspiring to here, not just in Mayo, but for all of Ireland. And, you referenced the mortgages as being a potential issue. Is there some way that the local authority home loans could be adjusted slightly for this? Because we know to the end of last year, it was a minority of people who were getting approval. I think it was something like 25% of people were getting approval, and only there at the start of February, there was some changes to the home loan scheme, increasing the limits for all local authority areas. I wonder, is there some way that could be fortified?
Well, it's certainly something. Yes, Carol, I think it's something we will look at. It's certainly something in conjunction with the pilot. And as I said, there will be a number of learnings to come out of this, and a number of things that we certainly will take from and see if we can change and tweak things in order to make it, more attractive, more accessible for people. Because ultimately, I think it's so important that we bring these properties back into use. And I think, in a sense, we are going down. As I said, there's a lot of good initiatives out there. But look, as I said before, the work isn't done yet, and there's more things that need to be done and have to be done in order to have more people own their own homes.
Tom, very little makes me optimistic around the delivery of new housing supply, and that includes bringing properties back into use. Very little makes me optimistic, but actually the work that you're doing together with the team there at Mayo County Council, I think is really heartening. And
thanks,
and I'm so impressed with Carol Casey and the Homebuyer Heroes team. And in fact, actually I'd encourage anybody to take a look at their website, because they've a range of different initiatives, not just around vacant homes, but around new built homes as well, that might be of benefit and of interest to local house builders. So innovation unlocks so much.
That's right. And I think, when you're looking at innovation and what technology and innovation has done, I mean, look, we've seen what it's done in relation to Uber and in relation to, taxis. We've seen what Airbnb has done in relation to, the tourism industry. And, in a way, I suppose, it'll be interesting to see what this pilot that we're doing now here in Mayo in collaboration with Homebuyers Hero, will it manifest itself into the next sort of .com initiative that will be transformative, and a lot of this is around disrupting the industry as well, and that's something I think we have to do. I mean, we have to disrupt the industry to some degree, and we have to bring in these new initiatives, because it's so important. And I mean, property I have found over the years has been very much as a bricks and mortar, but the technology and the ways of delivery are changing, and we're seeing that as well with the whole aspects in relation to modular homes is coming to the fore more and more. So I think the time is right to be doing these sort of innovative approaches and these innovative solutions, and we need to do that, because as you say, that at the moment, I suppose we are in a crisis. We're in with this housing crisis, and we need to do whatever we can, and whatever solutions we come up with, we need to trial them in order to see whether they'll have an impact.
I'm so delighted to hear you say that. So actually the one takeaway, I'm hoping that any other local authorities listening in, or any other state bodies, would really take that, actually the importance of exploring emerging technologies and innovation and actually trying it, because that's such a vital first step in order to establish proof of concept and see how impactful it'll be.
Absolutely. And the other thing as well, I mean, one of the great things about this, and this is a great example of the private and the public sector working together. And I think it is going to that whole of agency approach, and it is, we need to do that. We it's not, as I said before, it's not just one department or one agency or whatever. I do think we need a whole of agency and a whole of body approach in relation to this in order to address this issue. So it's great to see, and all the benefits with working with Colm is that it's great to be working with someone in on the other side, if you know what I mean. So but we need to see more of that. So I would encourage anyone that has any ideas or anything that they want to do. I'm reaching out to people at this stage to get in contact with me, and we'll see if we can work with them in order to try and bring these solutions to bear.
Tom, that call out will be absolutely circulated across PropTech Ireland and MMC Ireland for those innovating across the construction side. So thank you. We genuinely appreciate that. Look, I'll close by echoing your sentiments between public and private sector collaboration. More of this.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. That was Tom Gilligan, Director of Services at Mayo County Council. We need to take a quick break. Stay tuned.